Most people thought I left my son's wedding because I was upset. They were wrong. I walked away because, in that one moment, I finally understood something I had been refusing to see for years. Evelyn adjusted the satin lapel of her navy blazer as soft violin music floated through the glass conservatory at Lake Geneva. The wedding reception had just begun, filled with light laughter, shimmering crystal, and the scent of white gardenias. Evelyn had spent 3 months hand-stitching the intricate lace veil trailing behind her daughter-in-law, Megan. She had also contributed her late husband's vintage watch to her son, Derek, for his groom's gift. As the guests began migrating toward their assigned dinner tables, Evelyn approached table 1, positioned directly beside the main head table. Her printed place card sat neatly beside a silver plate, flanked by white roses. She pulled out the chair, setting her beaded clutch on the linen napkin. Before she could sit, a firm hand rested on the back of the chair. Megan stood there, her bridal gown draped across the carpet. Her mother, Brenda, stood right behind her, clutching a cocktail glass with a tight smile. "That seat is for my mother," Megan said in a low tone, sliding Evelyn's place card behind a floral centerpiece without looking her in the eye. "Brenda needs to be close to the front for the speeches. You can sit at table 9 near the kitchen doors." Evelyn looked at the empty place setting, then at Brenda, who quickly looked away. Table 9 was tucked behind a decorative screen where service waiters were rushing back and forth. Evelyn did not raise her voice. She did not argue or demand an explanation in front of the surrounding guests. Instead, she quietly picked up her purse, smoothed the front of her skirt, and placed her napkin on the table. "I understand," Evelyn said softly. She turned on her heel and walked quietly toward the exit doors. Before she reached the foyer, Derek stepped out from behind the photo wall. He stopped in his tracks, staring at her purse and coat. Mom Derek called out, his voice silencing the room. "Why are you leaving?" The room fell quiet as nearby guests turned to watch. Derek looked between his mother's coat and the empty seat at table 1, where Brenda was already settling into her chair. Megan hurried over, placing a hand on Derek's arm, while smoothing her dress with the other. "It is fine, Derek," Megan said quickly, her tone cheerful yet calculated. "Your mother simply prefers a quieter spot. Table 9 has much more space and easier access to the restroom." Evelyn observed her son's face. She saw the familiar flicker of hesitation in his eyes, the same look he had given during past family gatherings when Megan made subtle adjustments to accommodate her own family first. 3 months ago, when planning the rehearsal dinner at a local Italian bistro, Megan had quietly removed Evelyn's sister from the main guest list to make room for Brenda's country club acquaintances. Last Thanksgiving, Megan had reorganized the seating arrangement so that Evelyn spent the afternoon sitting on a folding chair near the drafty hallway while Brenda occupied the head of the dining table. Each time, Derek had chuckled nervously and told Evelyn that Megan was just stressed about hosting. Evelyn had brushed those small incidents aside, telling herself that young couples needed space to build their own traditions. But watching Megan now, standing under the chandelier in a gown funded partly by Evelyn's savings, Evelyn recognized the pattern clearly. It was not an accidental oversight or a simple misunderstanding about floor plans. It was an intentional boundary line, drawn in front of 200 guests. "There is no need to disturb the dinner, Derek," Evelyn said calmly, holding her handbag firmly against her side. The seating arrangement has been decided. I am simply heading home for the evening. Derek opened his mouth to protest, but Megan squeezed his elbow tighter, whispering that the caterers were waiting to serve the first course. Evelyn drove back to her brick craftsman house in suburban Milwaukee through the cool night air. The house was quiet, filled with the familiar scent of cedar and dried lavender, instead of sitting in the dark or dwelling on the evening's humiliation. She walked straight into her home office. For 7 years since her husband passed, Evelyn had operated a specialized upholstery and antique textile restoration studio from her renovated sunroom. Over the last 2 years, she had dedicated dozens of unpaid hours each week to help Derek and Megan set up their new home. She had reupholstered 6 vintage dining chairs for their breakfast nook, hand-sewn custom linen drapes for their living room, and managed the interior painting while they were working full-time. Sitting at her oak desk, Evelyn pulled out her calendar and a crisp notebook. She reviewed the upcoming schedule she had agreed to manage for the newlyweds. She was supposed to drive across town next Tuesday to oversee a team of floor contractors installing hardwood in their master bedroom. She was also scheduled to watch Megan's 2 golden retrievers for 10 days during their honeymoons in Maui. Evelyn picked up her pen, methodically. She crossed out the contractor oversight dates and drew a neat line through the pet sitting week. She opened her phone and typed a polite message to a reputable pet boarding facility in the area, copying the link into a short text message to Derek. I have updated my availability for the upcoming weeks, Evelyn wrote, keeping her tone pleasant and professional. I know you will both have a wonderful trip to Maui. Please make arrangements with the boarding facility for the dogs. She set her phone down, walked into the kitchen, and brewed a cup of chamomile tea, feeling a steady sense of clarity return to her shoulders. By Tuesday morning, the reality of Evelyn's quiet shift began to surface. Derek called her at 8 in the morning while driving to his corporate engineering office. His voice sounded harried over the Bluetooth speaker. Mom, the flooring guys just called, Derek said, the sound of highway traffic humming in the background. They said nobody met them at the house with the keys. I thought you were stopping by at 7:30 like we talked about last month. Evelyn leaned against her kitchen counter, holding a cup of hot black coffee. She looked out the window at her bird feeder, where 2 cardinals were pecking at sunflower seeds. I texted you on Sunday evening. Derek, Evelyn replied evenly. I let you know that I wouldn't be available to manage house contractors going forward. You will need to take a personal day or coordinate with Megan. There was a long pause on the line. Derek cleared his throat, sounding caught off guard. Megan is at a corporate retreat in Chicago until Thursday. Her mother was supposed to help, but Brenda said she has her golf league today. I can't take time off during quarterly reviews. Mom, I understand, Evelyn said kindly. Then you will have to reschedule the installers for a weekend. Can't you just run over there this once? Derek asked, his tone shifting from frantic to pleading. It takes 20 minutes from your house. My morning is already fully booked. Derek, Evelyn replied, looking at her work table where 3 antique velvet armchairs from a local historic theater were awaiting restoration. I have clients arriving at 9. After hanging up, Evelyn turned on her workbench lamp and picked up her shears. For years, she had made herself instantly available whenever Derek called, putting her own work and schedule on hold. Setting that boundary felt clean, precise, and entirely necessary. 2 weeks passed before Derek came over to Evelyn's house alone on a Saturday afternoon. He brought a box of pastries from the local bakery, setting them on the kitchen table where his father used to sit every morning. Evelyn offered him coffee and sat down across from him, noticing the tired lines around his eyes. Megan was upset about the dog boarding fees, Derek said carefully, taking a small sip of coffee. It cost $1,200 for the 10 days we were in Hawaii. She thought you were looking forward to staying at our house while we were gone. Evelyn watched her son set his cup back on the saucer. She noticed he was no longer wearing the vintage gold watch she had given him on his wedding day. Instead, a modern smartwatch sat on his wrist. "I hope you both had a peaceful trip," Evelyn said, choosing not to address Megan's expectations. Derek looked around the kitchen, his eyes landing on a newly framed photograph on the mantelpiece. It showed Evelyn standing alongside her sewing guild members at an estate exhibition last weekend. In the photo, she looked radiant, wearing an elegant emerald sweater, surrounded by colleagues who respected her craft. Megan's mother told everyone at the country club that you left the wedding early because you felt unwell, Derek said suddenly, his fingers tracing the edge of his paper napkin. "She said you get overwhelmed easily in crowds." Evelyn smiled slightly, setting her cup down without a sound. "Brenda is free to tell whatever story makes her comfortable." "Derek, but you were standing in the hallway when I left. You heard what was said." Derek shifted uncomfortably in his chair, looking down at his hands. Megan just wanted her mother in the front row. "Mom, she didn't mean anything personal by moving your card." "I know what she meant," Evelyn said softly, and I reacted accordingly. Instead of waiting for the newlyweds to include her in their weekend routines, Evelyn focused entirely on expanding her business and personal life. She applied for a prestigious preservation grant through the Wisconsin Arts Board, submitting a detailed proposal to restore 19th-century tapestries for historical societies across the Midwest. Her sunroom studio became a hub of purposeful activity. Clients from Chicago and Minneapolis began traveling to her home to drop off priceless family heirlooms. Evelyn hired a talented young apprentice from the local art college to assist with fabric prep work, creating a lively, productive atmosphere in her house. One Friday evening, Derek called to invite her to dinner at a high-end steakhouse in downtown Milwaukee. He mentioned that Brenda and her husband would also be joining them to celebrate Brenda's birthday. "Thank you for thinking of me, Derek," Evelyn said warmly over the phone as she smoothed a piece of gold brocade on her work table. "But I have tickets to the symphony tonight with my friend Clara, followed by dinner at the French bistro." "Oh," Derek said, clearly surprised. "You usually don't have plans on Friday nights." "My calendar has been quite full lately," Evelyn replied gently. "Have a wonderful dinner with Brenda." When Megan posted photos from the steakhouse later that night, showing Brenda sitting at the center of a lavish table, surrounded by flowers, Evelyn viewed the post with complete detachment. She felt no resentment, no envy, and no desire to compete for a seat at a table where she was treated as an afterthought. By taking control of her time, Evelyn had eliminated the power Megan thought she held over her emotional well-being. She was no longer waiting to be invited, valued, or accommodated. She was creating her own fulfillment on her own terms. In early autumn, 6 months after the wedding, Derek called Evelyn with an urgent request. His voice over the phone sounded tense and defensive, a clear sign that Megan was standing nearby while he made the call. "Mom, Megan's sister is getting married in November," Derek explained. "Brenda wants to host a pre-wedding luncheon at our house for 40 guests." Megan remembered the custom floral table runners and embroidered seat cushions you made for our engagement party. "She wants to know if you can make 40 matching sets for the luncheon." Evelyn pulled out her studio ledger, looking at her schedule filled with paid restoration contracts running through the end of the year. "That would require about 80 hours of custom handiwork. Derek, Evelyn stated, matter of fact, with materials and labor, a custom order of that size would cost around $3,000. Plus, my schedule is completely booked with museum contracts until January. There was a muffled argument on the other end of the phone before Megan took the receiver directly from Derek. Evelyn, this is for family, Megan said, her tone sharp and demanding. Brenda already told the bridal party that we would have custom decor. You did it for us for free, so I assumed you would do it for my sister's event as a courtesy. Evelyn kept her voice perfectly level. When I made decor for your engagement. Megan. It was a mother's gift to her son and daughter-in-law. I do not offer unpaid manufacturing services for extended acquaintances. If Brenda wishes to hire my studio, she can submit a formal inquiry through my website. This is completely unreasonable, Megan snapped. You are doing this out of petty spite because of where you sat at our wedding. No, Megan, Evelyn replied with quiet authority. I am running a professional business. Have a good evening. She ended the call before Megan could respond. The refusal created an immediate ripple effect within the family. Brenda was forced to pay an expensive commercial event designer from Chicago to create the decor for the luncheon, costing her nearly double what Evelyn's standard rate would have been. A week later, Derek came to Evelyn's house late on a rainy Tuesday evening. He walked into the kitchen, looking exhausted and visibly distressed. He sat at the counter while Evelyn prepared a pot of tea. Megan is furious with you, Mom, Derek said, running a hand through his hair. She says you are trying to distance yourself from our family and that you made her look bad in front of her mother. Evelyn poured the tea into 2 porcelain mugs, placing one in front of her son. She sat down opposite him and looked straight into his eyes. Derek, do you remember what happened at your wedding reception? Evelyn asked quietly. Derek looked away, staring into his mug. It was just a seat. Mom, Megan was overwhelmed with her family demands. It was not just a seat, Evelyn said firmly, her voice steady and clear. It was a clear message about where I fit into your new life. Megan made a choice to remove my place card and send me to the kitchen doors. She had every right to make that choice in her venue, but she does not have the right to demand my time, my work, or my labor when it benefits her social standing. Derek remained silent for a long moment. The weight of his mother's words seemed to finally settle on his shoulders. He looked around the warm, organized kitchen, remembering how his mother had worked 2 jobs after his father died to ensure he graduated from college without debt. I should have stopped her, Derek admitted softly, his voice cracking slightly. When I saw you walking toward the exit with your purse, I knew it was wrong. 2 months later, during the Thanksgiving holiday, Megan and Derek invited Evelyn to join them for dinner at their home. This time, Megan called Evelyn directly, her tone noticeably muted and polite. We would really like you to come, Evelyn, Megan said over the phone. Brenda and her husband will be there, but I have set a lovely place for you at the head table. Evelyn appreciated the attempt, but she recognized that true boundaries required consistent application, not temporary compromises driven by guilt. Thank you for the invitation, Megan, Evelyn replied calmly. However, I have already accepted an invitation to host Thanksgiving dinner here at my home for my guild colleagues and a few neighbors who don't have local family. You and Derek are welcome to drop by for dessert in the afternoon if your schedule allows. On Thanksgiving Day, Evelyn's house was filled with warmth, music, and the delicious aroma of roasted turkey and fresh herb stuffing. 6 guests sat around her beautifully decorated dining table, laughing and sharing stories. At 3 in the afternoon, Derek arrived at the house alone. He brought a container of pumpkin pie and sat quietly in the living room while Evelyn served coffee to her guests. When the guests moved out to the sunroom to view Evelyn's latest restoration project, Derek pulled his mother aside near the hallway foyer. He handed her a small velvet box. Inside was his father's vintage watch, professionally cleaned and polished, resting on a velvet cushion. "I took it off because Megan thought it didn't match my suit," Derek said quietly, looking his mother in the eye with genuine remorse. "I was wrong to listen to her. I want you to keep it safe for me, Sayemi, until I am mature enough to wear it properly." Evelyn looked at the watch, then at her son, seeing a real shift in his understanding for the first time. Spring arrived in Milwaukee, bringing warm breezes and blooming tulips along Lake Michigan. Evelyn's preservation studio flourished, securing 3 major museum contracts that established her reputation as one of the premier textile conservators in the region. She hired her apprentice full-time and began traveling quarterly to attend international design symposiums. Her relationship with Derek found a new, healthier equilibrium. They met every 2 weeks for breakfast at a quiet diner near her house, enjoying genuine conversations without the shadow of family drama. Derek began taking a firmer stance in his personal life, establishing his own boundaries and no longer expecting his mother to sacrifice her dignity for the sake of appearances. Megan remained distant, but her attitude toward Evelyn changed from dismissal to cautious respect. She realized that Evelyn was an independent, self-reliant woman who could not be manipulated or coerced into serving others' vanity. When family events occurred, invitations were extended politely, and Evelyn chose to attend only those that aligned with her values and schedule. One Sunday afternoon, Evelyn sat in her sunroom, watching the afternoon sunlight filter through the tall glass windows. The room was quiet except for the steady, rhythmic sound of her sewing machine stitching a piece of historic silk. She looked at a framed photograph on her desk, taken during her recent Guild lecture in Chicago. In the photo, she stood tall and confident at a podium, surrounded by people who valued her knowledge and presence. Leaving the wedding reception 6 months ago had not been an act of anger or defeat. It had been the moment she chose to honor her own worth. By walking away from a table where she was unappreciated, Evelyn had built a life where her seat was always earned, respected, and entirely her own.